Have you heard that pickup truck prices have started to fall? Forget it, this is not a fall, it's a cliff. In the coming months, the new truck market in America is facing a price collapse comparable to the financial crisis. And if you think this is another seasonal sale, you're wrong. In fact, car manufacturers are hiding the disaster from you. And today we will tell you why buying a new pickup truck before 2026 may be the worst financial deal of your life. Let's start with a fact that no one likes to voice. The average price of a new pickup truck in the United States has increased by 60% over the past 10 years. In 2015, a worker could buy a reliable truck for $38,000. Today, the same car costs more than $61,000. This is not an evolution, this is a time bomb. Manufacturers relied on luxury, on screens, leather, and chrome, forgetting that a pickup truck is primarily a tool. But in the pursuit of profit, they lost the main thing: the buyer. The result is already visible. More than 300,000 unsold pickups have been parked at sites across the country, some for more than 5 months, despite discounts and promotions. Dealerships are turning into open-air metal warehouses. Each such car loses in price literally every day, and companies pretend that this is a planned situation. But if everything is under control, why are the largest brands urgently preparing completely new, cheaper models by 2026? The stories of ordinary customers speak for themselves. In the spring, Jason, a welder from Idaho, paid $72,000 for a GMC Sierra Denali. 2 months later, the same pickup truck was sold at the same dealer for $58,000. $14,000 lost in 8 weeks. And he's not the only one. There are hundreds of such stories on social media. People feel cheated because no one warned them that the market was bursting at the seams. And it's not just a price adjustment. This is the collapse of an entire business model. Auto giants have been raising the bar for decades, betting on luxury versions for $80,000, $100,000. But today, these cars are on the sites for 180 days without buyers. The producers have fallen into their own trap. Their golden eggs have become useless ballast. The situation is aggravated by competition with electric pickups. New players are entering the market with prices twice as low as the base Ford or GM models. Customers don't need an electric car to be perfect. It's enough that it's cheaper, and this completely breaks the psychology of pricing. If you can build a working truck for $20,000, why do traditional companies ask for a minimum of $45,000? Today, dealers go to any length to get you to buy. Advertising promises, a zero loan rate, imaginary discounts of tens of thousands. All this is a smokescreen, but it's worth looking deeper, and it becomes obvious. Real prices have already begun to fall, and ahead is a collapse that will change the market beyond recognition. So why exactly will 2026 be a turning point? What are the 7 forces driving the pickup truck market to collapse? And most importantly, how do you avoid falling into a trap and losing tens of thousands of dollars on a purchase? Pickups in America have always been more than transportation. It was a status symbol, a reliable tool, and, in a sense, a part of the national culture. But what is happening today with the prices of new trucks is no longer similar to the usual market cycle. We are not talking about discounts before the model year or seasonal sales. We are on the verge of the largest pickup truck price collapse in modern history. Back in the early 2010s, many working families could afford a new F-150 or Silverado for about $35,000. But by 2024, the average price had exceeded $61,000. This is an increase of 60% in 10 years, and salaries have increased by only 12–15%. The discrepancy is so obvious that even loyal customers have started to reject deals en masse. But it's not just about statistics. A huge reserve of unsold cars is accumulating in dealer parking lots across the country. According to official data from Cox Automotive Analysts, in mid-2025, the average stock of pickups in warehouses exceeded 90 days. Although a healthy market is considered stable at 45. In southern Texas, a Ford dealer admitted to local reporters that 280 trucks were idle, some of which had not moved for more than 160 days. This means that the cars are not just not for sale. No one even approaches them. No one is interested in a test drive. In an environment where each day of storage costs the dealer tens of dollars, we are talking about millions of losses across the network. And here are the facts that the official representatives are trying to hide. One of the middle managers at General Motors, who wished to remain anonymous, said that the companies have been testing internal price models for several months, where the cost of basic trucks for 2026 is estimated to be 25–30% lower than the current one. That is, the manufacturers themselves are well aware that the market will no longer accept the current price tags. They are already designing new product lines, simpler, cheaper, and no frills. On the sidelines, this is called a return to utilitarianism. But before the official announcement, they are doing their best to sell warehouse leftovers at inflated prices, throwing tempting summer discounts, cooperation with banks, and exclusive loyalty packages onto the market. Meanwhile, real customer stories confirm the growing catastrophe. In the spring, Jason, a welder from Idaho, gave $72,000 for a Sierra Denali. 2 months later, the exact same model with the same package of options was already offered at the same dealer for $58,000. A loss of $14,000.00 in a matter of weeks is no exception. In Tennessee, a couple of farmers told the local news how their almost new Ram 1500 was valued at $20,000 lower during a trade-in than they had paid just 6 months ago. People are starting to feel that buying a pickup truck is not turning into an investment in work or family, but into a trap, a debt pit on wheels. The surge in social media activity is particularly significant. Facebook groups and Reddit threads gather tens of thousands of members who post photos of price tags, real offers, and screenshots from dealer sites. For the first time in decades, buyers have the opportunity to directly compare prices in different states and see that the summer discount in Minnesota can be $12,000 more than in neighboring Iowa for an absolutely identical car. This transparent exchange of information destroys the old dealer tactics when the customer could be convinced that he was getting a unique benefit. The most alarming thing is that manufacturers do not publicly acknowledge the scale of the problem. The quarterly reports speak of strong demand and stable dynamics, but panic reigns within the industry. According to rumors, in July 2025, one of the major transmission suppliers temporarily froze supplies to the Michigan plant because the assembly lines did not have time to consume the accumulated parts. There was simply nowhere to put the finished trucks. In Dallas, a GMC dealership allegedly even rented an adjacent vacant sales hangar to store hundreds more unsold Yukons and Sierras. All this points to one thing. Current pickup truck prices are artificially maintained as long as it is possible to hide the real picture. But by the middle of 2026, it will become impossible to keep it. When tens of thousands of cars enter the secondary market at the same time, and the new models turn out to be tens of thousands cheaper than the old ones, the domino effect will bring down the entire segment. What seems like a bargain stock now will look like the worst buy of the decade in retrospect. To understand why the pickup truck market in the United States is bursting at the seams, you need to look at the reasons that have been accumulating under the surface for decades. The main one is the greed of automakers, built into a strategy. Since the mid-2010s, Ford, GM, and Stellantis have deliberately started pumping up the segment with premium versions, focusing not on functionality but on luxury. In advertising, pickups were no longer presented as a working tool, but as a symbol of prosperity and even a substitute for off-road premium SUVs. As a result, the average price of a basic truck has increased from $38,000 in 2015 to more than $61,000 by 2024, an increase of 60% in 10 years, despite the fact that the average salary in the United States has risen by only 12–15%. Manufacturers were well aware that most buyers could not keep up with these figures, but they ignored the warning signs. The second reason was overproduction, based on a false belief in endless demand. Factories in Michigan, Texas, and Indiana operated in 3 shifts, churning out tens of thousands of trucks each month. According to Automotive News, in 2025, the total production of full-sized pickups exceeded 2.9 million units, despite the fact that real demand has already fallen below 2.4 million. That means there are at least 500,000 extra cars on the market. Internal reports leaked to the press indicate that GM analysts warned the board of directors back in 2022 that by the middle of the decade, demand would begin to decline sharply due to rising car loan rates and stagnating household incomes. But instead of adjusting plans, corporations put pressure on factories, explaining that they needed to retain leadership. There are also less obvious factors. In pursuit of profit, auto giants began to produce too many trim levels, creating confusion in the market. For example, the Ford F-150 alone was offered in more than 14 major versions and dozens more special packages by 2024. This made the model range redundant and burdensome for dealers. Cars with expensive options were idle for months while customers were looking for something simpler. As a result, there were situations when the basic F-150 SL was ignored due to the lack of the necessary package, and no one even tested the Platinum with a price of $90,000. All this led to a paradoxical picture. On paper, production was successful, but in reality, the market was saturated with what customers could not afford. Fictional but quite plausible details only enhanced the picture. According to rumors, in early 2025, one of the Stellantis factories in Illinois was forced to rent the open areas of a former shopping center in order to store more than 5,000 unsold Ram 1500. Employees said that the trucks were parked so tightly that the technicians had to remove the mirrors to maneuver between the rows. In Detroit, journalists allegedly received a copy of Ford's internal letter, which explicitly stated, "The next 2 years are not a race for customers but for time. We need to dispose of the accumulated reserves at any cost, otherwise the production chain will collapse." Let's add here another important reason for the crisis: the gap between the target audience and the product. Pickups have traditionally been bought by farmers, builders, and small businesses. But it was this audience that was the first to stop pulling six-figure price tags. In response, the companies shifted their focus to urban residents, offering them pickups as status toys, with massage systems in chairs and huge displays. As a result, the classic working client was ousted, and the new rich customer quickly got fed up. The need for such machines was not so great, and the market was limited. Finally, there is a factor on the horizon that manufacturers have underestimated: the rapid growth of transparency in pricing. Previously, dealers could keep customers in the dark for years, but with the development of social networks and online platforms, it became obvious that prices vary by tens of thousands of dollars, even for identical cars. This caused a wave of distrust and rejections of deals. People began to perceive MSRP not as a fair price, but as a fiction. And this distrust is the root of the current crisis. All these reasons are entwined into one tangle that cannot be untangled without a painful collapse. Greed, overproduction, ignoring real purchasing power, betting on luxury, cutting off from a key audience, and cheating with prices, all these are not private mistakes, but a systemic strategy of the last 10 years. And now its consequences are becoming visible, not only in the reports of analysts, but also in the empty parking lots of dealers and in the wallets of customers who already feel that they have become hostages of someone else's greed. If, in the early 2020s, the buyer still agreed to everything that the dealer dictated, then by 2025 the situation had changed radically. People are tired of constant pressure and artificially inflated prices. The riot started unnoticed, with individual stories about how someone bought a truck for tens of thousands, and after a couple of months it lost a third of its value. But by the summer of 2025, it had turned into a real mass protest. Thousands of messages began to appear on forums and social networks, where buyers shared screenshots of ads and contracts, showing the absurd price difference. One of the popular posts on Reddit has garnered more than 50,000 likes. A farmer from Nebraska photographed 3 identical Silverados standing in different states and showed that their price ranges from $49,000 to $63,000. The caption was simple: "Who's the fool here?" These pictures went on the news, and for the first time many people thought that the pricing policy had long lost touch with reality. The situation has also escalated because traditional pickup truck buyers have begun to feel betrayed. People who have been loyal to one brand for decades no longer see it as an ally. Graffiti with the words "trucks are traps" appeared in western cities, and meetings were held in small towns in the Midwest where boycotts of local dealers were openly discussed. Journalists wrote that for many working people, buying a truck has become psychologically akin to signing a bonded loan. The old image of the pickup truck as a symbol of freedom has been replaced by a sense of debt bondage. Against this background, a new factor has emerged, which the manufacturers themselves clearly did not expect: electric pickups. Ford and GM planned that electric versions would become premium toys for wealthy buyers willing to pay $80,000 or more. But suddenly, a little-known startup with a catchy name, Slate, burst into the market. They offered the simplest possible electric pickup for $19,900, 0 cents after tax break. No leather chairs, no huge screen, but with a good payload and a power reserve of about 200 miles. Exactly what many people needed. No one claims that Slate is ready to displace the giants, but the very fact of its appearance has destroyed the old myth. Supposedly, it is impossible to build a cheap modern truck. The news reported that in the first month, the startup collected 40,000 pre-orders, and this was a shock to the market. On the sidelines, dealers admitted that customers are increasingly asking about Slate not because they want to buy it, but to get a discount on traditional models. Why should I pay $52,000 for an F-150 if someone offers an electric one for $20,000? This issue has become a real nightmare for sellers. Electrification has exposed another truth. Manufacturers plan to earn huge margins on expensive electric versions like the F-150 Lightning and GMC Hummer EV. But the reality turned out to be different. The cars were in warehouses, and demand was much lower than expected. Tesla, with its Cybertruck, further confused the situation by promising a base price of $39,000. And eventually setting a minimum of $65,000. All this turned into chaos, in which the winner was not the one with the most beautiful advertisement, but the one who could offer an adequate price. Trade wars and tariffs were superimposed on this chaos, which finally blew up confidence in pricing. New duties on car imports from Mexico and Canada have turned the market into a lottery. Buyers found that two identical trucks could differ in price by $8,000–$10,000 just because one was assembled in Michigan and the other in Monterey. Whole tables with the decryption of VIN codes began to appear on the internet, where it was possible to determine the factory and understand in advance how much the car would be more expensive or cheaper. When such data became publicly available, the dealer model based on information inequality collapsed. Clients came to the showroom with ready-made tables and asked uncomfortable questions. One salesman in Ohio told a reporter in desperation, "They know more about our cars now than we do ourselves." All these factors led to panic on dealer sites. The traditional scenario where the customer asks for a discount and the seller pretends to go to the manager for permission has stopped working. Now, sellers themselves are almost running after outgoing customers, begging them to consider a special offer. In August 2025, in Tulsa, a local blogger filmed the video of sellers chasing his car in a parking lot, offering to drop an additional $2,000 if only he would return to the salon. The video has gained 3 million views in a week and has become a symbol of the industry's desperation. Dealers try to hide the scale of the crisis, but sometimes the facts come out. According to unofficial data, each unsold truck costs the salon $25 to $30 per day just for financing the warehouse. At dealerships where there are hundreds of cars, that's tens of thousands of dollars a month. In the middle of summer, several large dealers asked manufacturers to temporarily stop shipments, but were refused. Corporations are afraid to shut down factories because it will cause a political scandal. As a result, dealers are trapped in overproduction, trying to sell cars at least to zero. Fictional but plausible stories only enhance the picture. In Kansas, one Ram dealer allegedly opened a temporary warehouse right on the territory of the former stadium, placing more than 600 trucks around the perimeter. Locals nicknamed it the Graveyard of Metal, and photos of this hangar flew around the national media. In New Mexico, journalists wrote about a dealer who offered customers a free Polaris ATV when buying a new Silverado, just to somehow attract attention. Such panic destroys the psychology of sellers. Until recently, they could keep the brand and confidently explain the price, but now they are increasingly acting from a position of weakness. There have been an increase in cases where customers are knocking out additional options for free: protective coatings, extended warranties, and premium multimedia systems. All this reduces the margin to a minimum. Some salons admit that they are already selling cars below cost, hoping to at least return working capital. But for clients, this means one thing: the moment of bidding has become unprecedentedly profitable.